Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where this episode is proudly sponsored by W. Daniel Cox III, who is a data governance advisor. From a leadership perspective, you would have had to lead practice managers, you would have had to lead yoga instructors, and I can tell that you would have been a caring leader. You would have cared for their soul as well as their their financial and physical body. What was leadership to you, Aaron?
I would say that I've never been a great leader. I'm a tremendous visionary. I'm a terrible manager, and I think you need to be a reasonably good manager to be a good leader. I constantly looked to have influence over myself. I think in having that self-discipline and seeking to take good care of myself and live the life that I really wanted to live, I think there's nothing that creates people wanting to follow in a pathway more than you living your pathway.
Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where we unpack all things influence and we help leaders particularly find their influence by talking to amazing humans and finding out what influence means to them, who they've been influenced by and who they have influenced. And this podcast episode, proudly sponsored by the Guinea Group of companies. The Guinea Group helps leaders upgrade, upskill, uplift their teams and their influence. Team, you're listening to the most amazing human, one of the nicest guys I went to school with in 1988 and 1989. I didn't quite finish the 1989 year, but that's another story which we'll unpack maybe on this
I didn't
podcast.
even know that.
Stop it.
I missed you exiting left.
Did you really?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, for everyone listening, Aaron was one of the nicest humans to ever go through that school in 1989. I'm telling you, he's a beautiful human, still is. Now, I'm going to give you the quick intro for what I remember, and then Aaron can tell me what I got right or wrong. I used to look forward to catching up with Aaron every 5 or 10 year reunion, because this is what I'd hear about. I'd hear about a young man who left school, who got into a relationship early, had kids very early. And I remember him telling me about the age of 25. I had kids early, so I had to provide for them, so I thought I'd better get busy. Aaron studied chiropractic and all of a sudden had a heap of chiropractic clinics around the place and was doing really well even at our 10-year reunion. Then that moment passed and Aaron thought, well, hold on a second, I think yoga's a good idea. And so all of a sudden, Aaron transitioned into the name was Bonfire Yoga. I'll never forget that. It's still in my phone as a Bonfire Yoga. And that was hot yoga, I believe, Aaron, by memory.
Absolutely. I'll embellish upon that story and that transition and the reasons why, and we'll go from there. But it's certainly, the hot yoga, good for my mental health, good for my physical health, kept me together. Still doing it. Still teaching.
Still doing it? Still doing yoga? Cool. Yeah. I love it. And as you can see, Team Aaron stayed in pretty good shape. This dude is 53 years old, as am I, 1972 model. And again, after the yoga, this is the story that I love the most. Aaron retired early. I guess you call it retired, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And used to, last time I saw him, so this is why I'm so keen to catch up now, used to spend 6 months in Australia and 6 months in this little town called Niagara-on-the-Lake. That was the last that I caught up with Aaron. And based on that, we actually went and visited Niagara-on-the-Lake 10 years ago, and I loved the little town. I sent Aaron a photo of it recently and said, do you still do this? And he said no. But mate, what have I, like, you might want to tell me something else or tell our listeners and our viewers.
There's not just water under the bridge there, there's an ocean. So there's a lot going down the river. And if you go down that river, there's a big fall.
Niagara Falls, to be specific.
I navigated the rocks and I find myself back in Australia. Very good. Yeah. So, going back to that era, it was a pivotal time in my life, Nudgee, where you and I were hanging out, and the reason was I'm from a rough and tumble North Queensland family, and certainly would never have had the opportunity to attend a place like Nudgee College. But for the fact that I was blessed beyond measure with some rugby skills and some academic skills, and blessed the Christian Brothers picking me up and giving me a scholarship to that school.
Nice. I didn't know that. And see, there's something I didn't know either.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been able to afford the uniform, much less the tuition. And so, there's a great story. I couldn't afford to fly down to Brisbane from Mackay. So my mum, in a little Gemini, you could actually see the asphalt through the floor. You could actually see through the floor. So we'd pull up outside Nudgee College with the Mercedes and all the cars turning up, and we'd be in a little Gemini, mum, four kids in the car, mum dropping me off down at Nudgee. So that's how I arrived at boarding school, to be frank. And Steve McLaughlin, bless his soul,
R.I.P.
yeah, yes, he made it possible for me to receive that education, and it was an important one because, small town sportsman, probably a little off the rails relatively.
Were you really? No.
Just from the perspective of, if you stay in a little small town where you're sort of, sports your thing, and I needed to tighten the ropes up. Home was never going to provide that. Home provided me the freedoms to become whoever I chose to be frank. And God bless my mum for just giving me nothing but love. And so, landing in that big pond was intimidating. And the way that I got through that was actually just to lean into my academia. And so that was a blessing, that was a blessing. Really appreciated that. And yes, and then all things changed because my mate at Nudgee, if you've got any questions, fire away.
Can I just ask you one thing about that, Aaron? Because I think everyone's going to get some benefit from this. This is what I've been busting to know since you left school. You were someone at school. So, and let's just go back to what we talked about before this. You got 2 earrings. You got pointed toenails. You're your own person. So when my brother and I talk, so Joey and I caught up yesterday. I said we were talking today. You and I were talking, and he said, Aaron Tselepy, his own person. At Nudge, everyone else tried to fit in. Aaron never did. Aaron wore white footy boots. Aaron did everything.
The white footy boots that got me on the subby bash list and got the piss knocked out of me. You're right.
I remember it. See, I remember it. But you owned it, mate. You were the so, like, you struck me as just so confident, and maybe you weren't, but you just did it. You've just done life your own way, and that started boarding school, and that was always really inspiring. I don't think you probably realize how much that sort of rubbed off on people. That was influential. At 17, I thought, holy shit, go you, bro.
No, I appreciate that. And I think, I don't have a single regret about the difficulties and the challenges of growing up in a low socioeconomic environment with limited guide rails. Outside of, and I always come back to this, the great influence of the admiration and love from parents. I certainly never lacked any of that. And, that sets you on a path, doesn't it? I think that's the greatest thing we can get our children, and we can speak to that because the most proud influence that I've exerted in this world is certainly the relationship I share with my 3 adult children, who are now 33, 32, and 31.
Right. And you had all them by the age of 20, I think, by memory.
Thereabouts. I couldn't work out what was causing it, and I didn't have a TV.
Nice.
That was the issue. But yeah, Nudgee allowed me, being out of the home environment and really ready for that to some extent, But, there was certainly a drive given to me when you're surrounded by wealth, you're surrounded by success, seemingly, the facades of such coming from a small country town in North Queensland. And so I instantly got that hunger that let's just say a poor boy trying to make good would have. And you probably nailed it, that I got extremely blessed, I believe, in my life, in the creation of those 3 kids and the drive that puts into the soul of a young man, no doubt. But there were some great influences before that because Rotary, I can't speak more highly of as an organization. They picked me up after Nudgee picked me up and sent me to Sweden for a year. I lived in a little northern freezing town in the north of Sweden. Learnt Swedish, very useful language, as you could imagine. And again, that I think really helped with when you're sitting in a physics class at a tiny school called Torsbergsskola in the north of Sweden, with nothing, you can't understand the language. I'm doing chemistry, believe it or not, all done in Swedish. I couldn't understand a word. It's a pre-med course in the Swedish school, but it's done in Swedish. I couldn't. So I sat there reading the likes of Odd Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world. Yeah. I became obsessive about reading the likes of Dale Carnegie, That was a really interesting developmental process for me, because my parents in Sweden were both school teachers, and I went there with long blonde hair and wild ambitions to do nothing but have a good time. And he was a physics teacher. She was a German, English, and Swedish teacher. And so I became what's called a plugghest, which is a plugghest is a workhorse so to speak. So I was probably the only exchange student that learned fluent Swedish within 6 months, but it wasn't due to my prowess with a soft palate. It was due to my mother like whipping me into shape with my Swedish and not speaking English to me. Yeah, that worked. But that really got me ready for heading off to Melbourne to study 2 degrees, because it got the discipline in and a lot of time on my hands, which I'd never had before. You might hear it in my nomenclature, but I'm more ADHD than you can poke a hairy stick at. There's a lot of directions going at once. And Sweden, I didn't have that opportunity. When you're in -30 with nothing to do but read a book I did, I got educated on many levels, and I think I learnt to quieten my exuberant personality, because I had 4 brothers there, and they were a musical family, a musical family and a academic family, and I'd come from a family where it was like days of our lives, a country practice, and go out on your bike. There's all rolled into one. I diverge and get lost in amongst that. But yeah, another huge thing, probably the greatest influence over my early years was, you might remember Francis Hartnett.
Oh, how's Frank going?
I think Frank's had a tumultuous and colourful life, is what I can tell you. One of his biggest influences, he lived in Berlin, where he married an East Berliner, had 2 wonderful boys, Maximilian and Leopold, and he ran a very successful historical tour company called Walking Tours of Berlin. Why do I raise that? Oh, because I fell in love with his sister in year 11.
Oh, right. I didn't know that. Right.
Yeah. So that was a major influence. I mean, she was 6 years older and married, so try that one on for size,
Right.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't the mother of your kids?
That was the mother of my 3 kids.
Right. What school was Frank's sister at?
She was well beyond school.
Oh, she was well beyond school. Sorry, that's right. You said
No, not at all. She was a Stewart Home girl from Stewart Home, but I think Sacré-Cœur, Melbourne, principally. So that's how Jordan arrived in 1st year uni, Joshua arrived in 2nd year uni, and Jessica arrived in 5th year uni.
As you do, doesn't it?
As you do. No TV.
I love it.
Car didn't start very often.
Right.
living on $30 a week.
Really? How did you?
Actually, that's a great story I'd share with you. This is a great story. I used to, we were broke all of the time. And so I got a job that 1st or 2nd year uni packing shelves at Safeway. And it was a shit of a job, because it started at 10 p.m, finished at 2 a.m, and then I had to turn up for 8 a.m. lectures. Not easy. Hard job. But because I was really, I had a really good time of it academically, I loved studying the human body. It wasn't difficult to find motivation to study that at university. And so I got very, very good at anatomy and neuroanatomy, all the applied sciences. And so I worked out, I had a nursing student who asked me would I offer her some tutoring. I was like, $17 an hour at Safeway, $35 an hour to do a shoot. So I did the first shoot I ever did in 2nd year. The next week she asked, could she bring a friend along? I said, if you bring a friend along, I'll make it only 25. So now I was getting $50 for the hour. And to cut a long story short, it didn't take long before I had lecture theatre with 200 in it, paying $8. Yeah, that was the one. So I would take my hat home full of like $400 or $500, sometimes $800, and pour it on the bed, and we'd all jump up and down, feeling like we'd won the lotto. That was a good story.
Kidding me?
Yeah,
it's amazing.
The power of leverage with numbers, with I guess that's a
knowledge. Knowledge is currency.
Yeah. Because what I became very good at teaching, the subject matter used to be how to pass your exams. It didn't matter the subject matter. Yeah, that's why it was popular. How to pass your exams. I would just teach them color coding, how to take good notes, how to use question time, this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Wow. And then, you've paid your way through uni because you had 3 kids to support. You didn't know how you're going to do that at the start. Packing
Yeah.
shelves.
Yeah.
Now you get money to help people pass exams.
Exactly.
And I guess at some stage you finish your medical and your chiro degree, and all of a sudden, you're free to go out into the world and play with and manipulate bodies.
Well, one of the great things that happened 4th or 5th year, I found good mentors, brilliant young doctors who were doing what I would choose to do. And they would pay me to find patients for them. If you think about that, what an opportunity to learn on the cutting edge of how to grow a practice. And so, they would incentivize me to check people's spines or do what you do, sitting in a mall, so to speak. And they'd give me $50 per patient that I booked in. I mean, gee whiz, I would have liked to have found 10 of me when I was in practice.
Right. This is a crazy story.
But that was a good story of influence and learning the craft. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer, a teacher, a doctor, whatever you happen to find yourself in. Ultimately, you're trying to sell yourself, to whoever's in front of you. And I guess that's an influence that I learnt early on to serve.
So all of a sudden, so now you're doing business development for doctors, and you think, well, this is pretty cool because if I applied this to my own practice, imagine how much money I could make because you know to sell. So now you open a chiropractic clinic, because I know that happened at somewhere around this stage.
Early on, actually, I was super, super blessed again. There was a great chiropractor who, brilliant chiropractor, but he developed stomach cancer. And so his practice dwindled away to near nothing, and that practice came on the market just as I was about to graduate. And so my mum at the time must have put out a GoFundMe page. There's no such a thing 30 years before these, but the equivalent of such, maybe my aunties or whoever, but came up with 30 grand for us to buy that practice. And so we actually went into an established practice that had died, which is probably the perfect business you want to get into, as opposed to something that's flying. And so that was 1996, and went into that practice with 3 little kiddies. They were 1, 3, and 4. Took them up there. Actually, the practice was in the house that we lived in, and that practice within a couple of years was one of the busier chiropractors. One of the busiest
on the Gold Coast.
That was in a little town called Ballina.
Ballina, New South Wales.
Yeah.
Right. Aaron Tselepy, and then all of a sudden, this grew to a number of practices by memory.
Yeah, it did. Probably the multiple practice thing came out of a really bad injury that I had. I was Christmas Day 1997. I could water ski pretty well. That came from Sweden as well. And I had a high speed trying to barefoot water skiing accident that it didn't do good things to my wrist, really bad. And as you can imagine, I was a manual chiropractor, seeing lots of patients booked in like the next Monday, and I've got a grade 3 sprain of the scapholunate in my wrist. And so I didn't survive very long. I was under the care of a great surgeon and plowed forward, severely underinsured, tried to hold that all together. But ultimately that injury dictated a massive shift in my life, because I was practicing in a lot of pain for a lot of time. And so that necessitated a move back into that notion of becoming a teacher as opposed to becoming a doer. And so I went on a little bit of a tour around the world teaching how to have successful practices. That's what led me on took my kids to Europe, took my kids to America, mostly because I couldn't practice. That was the bottom line.
So how long did it take the wrist to come good? Did it ever come good?
When you sever the scapholunate, there's a little cartilage in there called the triangular cartilage, and it was wrecked. And ultimately, the way that I adjusted, which is kind of old school chiropractic, let's just leave it at that, like really using my body as the tool, that led me down a more academic pathway, led me into the study of law, and just a different direction in life. And ultimately in 2008, just because my old rugby body was giving me trouble, wrist was giving me trouble, that's hot yoga was what was suggested to me, because I kept on pulling hammies and pulling my groin and feeling like I was 100.
Were you still playing rugby then?
No, rugby continued after college. I played down in Victoria. I played A grade in Victoria. I played in Sweden as well a little bit. But when you've got 3 kids under 3, 2 and 10 months between the 3 of them, I think Susan at one stage said, well, it's rugby or divorce, you get to choose.
Right. Okay. Good. And you chose.
Absolutely. I chose being a daddy. It's the greatest decision I would have made for sure.
Good on, of course.
Yeah.
Right on.
And
Good choice.
that was kind of the next, that was the next 16 years or so, was really committed to raising the 3 J's, Jordan and Joshua and Jessica.
Right. And so you started doing yoga to help yourself, obviously to feel better and to heal your body.
Yeah, Bikram's
and then you just thought,
interesting.
Well, I might as well buy a few practices if I'm going to do yoga.
Well, I went off. I decided, as you do when you fall in love with your practice, or at least when Bikram's a very therapeutic yoga. It's a little bit of a death of ego, death of lots of things. It's so difficult. It was so tough. You're doing it in 40 degrees heat, 40. You're sweating bullets. And when you think you've found something profoundly influential over yourself, you want to share that. So what do? You go off and become a teacher. It's like going off to the circus. I went off and became a yoga teacher. Yeah, that was 2009. Yeah. And here we are, fitter and stronger, and new model every time I go into a class, that's for sure.
And better for it.
Better for it, no question.
And still coach yoga these days, train yoga.
I don't teach a lot these days. I took a different pathway to that because it was I'd been in a strong role for a lot of years that I needed to have a break from, which is why I became a farmer. But I diverge. Let me just go back to something skipped over. Which no, not at all. But I think given my upbringing, given the influences of my dad, my entire extended family, I think I was incredibly blessed by the obligation that sits with somebody if you've got 3 young kids. And so, that drove a lot of my decision making. That protected me immensely from my inherent wildness. You put a set of guide rails up that, were probably not going to be available to me had I not been, married at 19 and 3 kids by 22, and those guide rails allowed me to forge in the fire the personality that was required to be a successful dad, I think. So I would put down, I like Eric Weinstein. Do you like Eric Weinstein? Yeah, Eric Weinstein. I just find Eric and Brett Weinstein to be men that I love listening to right now. Most people have heard a lot of Joe Rogan, and when Joe has the ilk of the Weinsteins on, but recently Brett Weinstein's kind of pretty fed up with the world. He's become very animated in his offering of advice, and I love his advice. And the advice that he provides today on how to have a successful life is basically a blueprint for what occurred to me by accident, which dictated the reason that I feel that my life has been beyond blessed. And basically what he says is this. He's like, the answer to all of the problems of young people today is go out there, find a partner, get married, have children, look up at the stars, get your hands dirty. It's profound advice. You would know that we've got a significant issue with birth rates, population. And actually, I sit in there. I'm severely frustrated, Anthony. I have 100 years of children, and I don't have a grandchild. So to quote Pauline Hanson, please explain.
You're waiting for the 3 J's to reproduce it right at the moment.
Big time. I've got some promises on the board. I've got some promises on the board. Jordan, the eldest, she's a fabulous dentist. She's an orthodontist these days, and she married Ricky. And they're on their honeymoon right now for 3 months. We've got Alison and I've got our fingers crossed that she will return to Australia knocked up.
All right, good. Well, let's hope, mate. I'm putting it out there for you. Good vibes.
Come on,
Good
come on.
vibes.
I'm ready. I've been training for 53 years to be grandpa.
Oh, stop.
I'm ready.
Yes.
I'm so
I've been
ready.
in training. Oh,
And then,
love it.
and then Jessica, the youngest, fabulous woman. She's a brilliant PhD candidate through Melbourne Law School. Jessica's a PhD candidate through Melbourne Law School. This is a great thing. I raced thoroughbreds for a while, and terrible game. Jessica's PhD is she's a specialist in animal law and animal rights. Yeah, she's incredible. She lectures at the university in Finland, and she's all over the world doing her thing. And she has a fabulous man, Jack, and they're way into AI. They have an amazing new AI company called Hello Bridges, and because they're fundamentally opposed to marriage and all that it stands for and all that its history evokes in humankind, they just decided to share. They become Jessica Tselepy and Jack Nagy became Jessica and Jack Bridges. I like that. Making a bridge, whatever you want.
I love that.
I like that.
Mate, they sound like their dad, carving their own path, man.
They're carving their own path. As is my son. I don't leave out Joshua in the middle of those two. He's the reason I have these earrings in. I wasn't pierced until well after 50. Yeah, but I just he'd hate me even talking about it. But Joshua's flamboyant, looks like Johnny Depp gone wrong. No, that's not true. Johnny Depp, how could you say? Yeah. Flamboyantly expressionist, you know.
He might have got that from his dad too, just quietly.
Or I could have got it from him.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And our kids influence us as much as we influence them, Aaron Tselepy. I love that.
There's no question about that. Probably more so, to be frank.
100%. Especially then Gen Zers, because you got Gen Z kids. Well, actually, you've probably got millennial kids, and that's even different again. So
that's right. 92, 93, 95.
Yeah, they're millennial kids. Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
I've got two Gen Zers, different generation, but and yours would have seen, your kids would have grown up with hard work, not a lot early and all that sort of stuff. Ours were born into the internet. They don't know any different, they're just, instant gratification, the Gen Zers. So, but anyway, another topic. Mate, and what does Josh do?
Josh is let me just put it that he makes music.
Oh, go the boy.
Yeah, he's an artist, and he's just finding his way. My hope is Joshua's had a really deep life lesson in finding his path, and with a dad such as he's had, I think that's created a lot of challenges for Josh that he's overcome. He's overcome magnificently. But he continues to find his path. My hope is that he ends up, Joshua lived on the streets for a good while. It was sandwiched between two incredible young women. Joshua's just found it hard to find his footing. And, but he's finding his footing now. And my hope is that he moves into social work because he's got a depth of experience that most humans, it's fair for me to say that you couldn't have the depth of experience that Joshua has and be alive very often. Yeah.
So he's treated his body harshly, or
indeed.
Right.
Yeah. And he could be a profound influence on young kids on the streets trying to find their way. Yeah. So I hope I think he has an intention to go in that direction. At the moment, music still holds his attention, and he's doing the best with what he's got. He just doesn't realize that what he's got is a lot.
Right. He doesn't realize the potential of his story just yet, or the power of his story.
Yeah. Exactly.
He probably doesn't have that ability yet to turn that pain into purpose, and a lot of people don't. I think there's a reckoning, there's a realization at some stage, Aaron. And
it's a very, very good point. That's a super point, and probably that pivot for him will either come or it won't come. But at the moment, he hides from his pain and cloaks it with the you know, with the great depressants that are available out there, you know. So he, I think if he sits in his pain for a little while, which he's not prone to do just now, but when he does, you know, that shift will come very quickly. And if he doesn't sit with it, it won't come at all, and he won't get through it. But
Well, I certainly hope in a year or two's time I'm ringing you and saying, "Hey, can I get you if you're on the podcast and talk about influence?"
that would be cool.
Who
That
is
would,
he?
that would be hilarious.
Wouldn't that be nice?
We'd have a lot of laughs. That's for sure.
Oh, look, it's on the to-do list, Aaron Tselepy. This is the conversation. This is the bit that I'll remember out of this conversation.
I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's where my heart sits a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And you know, I've reconciled to Josh's death many times. I've shed many a tear, and I've come out the other side already ready for a bright future. Always, you know, it's really good having done that. You do the work. You do the work you need to do, and you know, we'll leave it at that.
And a shout out to our sponsor, W. Daniel Cox III, who advises boards and executive teams on data governance, data strategy, and AI governance. His work focuses on helping organisations align growth strategy with clean, traceable, and defensible data. Click the link below to reach out to Daniel for any help with your data governance. And everyone listening to this, you know, you could have thought just for a moment that Aaron's had a fairly, you know, before we got on, Aaron said no silver spoons were ever put in his mouth, which I love. And then he's talked about this great, you know, business life. And now, if you haven't picked up, Aaron's sort of probably semi-retired, I suppose you'd call it. But at the end of the day, our kids will never stop worrying about them. They will be the people that cause us the most concern, heartache, pain, you know, and just worry forever. And, you know, my kids were driving around on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and you just worry about everything they do, and you know,
it never stops. That's for sure.
It never stops. Never stops. And you speak so beautifully about them. You articulate beautifully, mate.
They're incredible. They're incredible. They're incredible kids. I can't even express to you that they're what a mixture of incredible genetics, and I just love watching it all. It's a great thing, and that's why I think it's a my hope is that the next generation, I hope that the influences that will come to bear on humanity in the near future move us back towards procreation, and move us back towards parenthood, and move us back towards the pressures that they should be under, as opposed to the ones that they perceive currently. Yeah, which are illusionary and not based in anything that gets your hands dirty or anything that creates something that you can actually physically get involved in. That's the challenge, right?
And that creates this level of emotion and this level of conversation when we talk about the reconciling death with yourself, when it's the most loved thing that you could ever, you know, there's nothing more that you love on this planet, and to reconcile that you could lose that, you know, they're deep emotions, which most people probably, you know, most parents may or may not have grappled with. And for any of our listeners,
well, you and I are getting to an age now where we're going to, you know, I'm now sitting in that age where we're watching our parents. You know, I haven't been surrounded by a lot of death, and I think as that comes, we get to really reflect upon. It is something that I wanted to share about influence and so forth, and that is that, you know, at 53, I really do feel the same as I did at 18, insofar as I feel like I'm, you know, I don't want to say a failure. Let me tell you what I'm thinking there, is that at 18, you're trying to construct yourself, and you find ways to construct yourself, whether that be through, you know, doing push-ups, going to the gym, reading this book, finding an influence, and I still feel like I'm 18 in that I'm open to recreating myself, and what am I going to do to make this body work better, and what am I going to do to have my head think a bit clearer and not sink. You know, I've been bipolar my whole life, which I love and celebrate. It's one of my superpowers, and you know how we're constantly working, and I think I'm learning as I'm aging that that's never going to pass, and thank God, because I feel like I'm recreating my life every day, you know. And what have I got to do to have today be my best day? And where can I find influences? And, you know, you find a new friend, and that friend's jacked and got a great body. And what are you doing? Going to the gym. Right, back to the gym I go. Or whatever it happens to be, you know. But it's nice to feel that you are never glued into neither the physical form nor the mental form that you're currently constructed with. You really aren't. You know, and I feel that. I feel that as a truth.
Never glued. Mate, I love that. You know, and I think yours and my stories are sort of very different. You went to Nudgee and it was an eye opener for you. I went there and probably wasted that 2 years, and then probably wasted the next 10. Not wasted. I just, like, and you would have seen this in your life too. Glided through, I suppose. Just like I just existed rather than sort of,
I would have been that. I would have been there. I would have been there 100% with my personality and what I would have done with the gifts that I was given. I would have been there 100% in that story, and I know that. And that's why I feel like having children early and being put under the ultimate pressures of feeding them and nurturing them, and being a role model to them, without that early in my life, I would have been off the rails 100%, and that, I could feel the thumbprint of my wife coming out the back of my skull. Have you got a bump in the back of your skull?
Yeah, I used to.
That was my wife's thumbprint, which, whilst I lived under resentment, actually I recognize forged in the fires of good quality guidance.
Of good quality manhood and parenthood and humanhood. Let's say humanhood. Good quality humanhood. You're a good human. Man, I love the way you can articulate that. Yeah, and we married early. We didn't reproduce early, which was something that my wife wanted to put off. And she said, Aaron, let's wait a few years. And I said, yep, no worries. And so, and I think you're right. It was probably that period. It was not long after we'd had our first child that I went and became self-employed and probably started founding the drive that I still have in life now. And like you, I'm still recreating. And now this podcast is a new thing. And one of my missions, that I've just did it up, I wish I had the printout, was to connect with all us Nudgee boys next year. Like I want to have conversations like this more often.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And you're the first one off the list, by the way. There you go.
Yay. May I inspire them all to have a chat to you. It's really good. I probably, Nudgee was more a survival than anything else for me, because it's, I mean, you're similar to me. You didn't have the year 8, year 9, year 10 warm up, did you?
That's right. No, shit, no. I was like you, bro. Remember, I was in a blue there my second day in. I think it was Tuesday night, and someone was punching me, without, before that, sucker punch or whatever it's called now was a thing. That used to, and I don't think, Aaron, and this is said with love, and so let's honour the school that it is and the school that it is now, but let's also honour what you and I went through at that school, which was, you weren't treated well by the.
No, look, I'll tell you this now, like, a bit controversial. I stand firmly against religion being involved in education. I stand firmly against any religious indoctrination of our youth. I think, give me the realm of this country, give me the leadership of this country, I would absolutely force separation of religion out of education. Similarly, religion out of politics. And so Nudgee taught me that a lot, whilst I really had a great opportunity and a great blessing to have the likes of Dan McMahon and some of the Christian brothers who took me under their wing, in a big way. But the sins of Catholicism, I would dismantle it stone by stone and not allow it to exist. So my point being that, I don't really have much positive to say about anything to do with an education that's based out of Catholicism or religion. I just fundamentally stand against it. And I think, we could go down that pathway, but we don't need to. What I count as my blessings, and it is I get that it's the Christian brother ethos, it's the Edmund Rice ethos to provide education to those that don't have opportunity, and I was given that. But fundamentally, I would like to see a far stricter separation. Yeah. I would like to see that, and I think it's coming. I think as mankind develops a more intricate knowledge of itself, the stories that we've used for just a short period of time to try and reconcile the world, which is no longer necessary, and it's the same story across every religion anyway, whether it's the trilogy or whether it's whatever it is. It's all stories trying to understand the universe. But I am a born again atheist, and But I believe in spirit, and I believe in the wonders of the universe and all that.
That's right. Exactly. And I
didn't mean to get into that too heavily.
No. I think it's great, Aaron. Thanks for sharing, mate. Well, no, I love the philosophical aspect, and I think, well, why can't we have a view on that? Like I think it's great to have that view. Um, do I agree? I don't know. I'm going to think about that because I've never actually thought about it like that before. I've never thought about school or we grew up in Catholic school, so that's what we did. Is there a future without that? Potentially, who knows? I think the thing that I struggled with probably the most was that we're in a Catholic school when we're supposed to, like now you wouldn't have bullying in school. So I've spoken to a lot of our cohorts as I go back every 5 or 10 years, and every single one of them to a person, Aaron, says that the school is now extremely, I guess, whatever the right word is, non-bullying, look
Yeah.
after
Yeah,
females.
the world has caused that. I mean, I probably would say I can't think of something that makes less sense than segregating sexes in such a competitive age. I mean, young men need to be beaten into shape by being around girls who are more mature, a whole lot smarter, and will hold them to account. When you leave boys to hold each other to account, it ends up in a whole lot of harm.
A plan with a lot of downsides, actually. That's right. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's interesting. Oh, mate, like intriguing. Another that'll be number two that I remember out of this conversation. Josh, then should we not have religions in schools? Because like and look, let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. But the one thing that I will say is that some of the names on the houses have been changed now based on learnings since then. Let's just say, right? So I'll let our listeners and our viewers understand what that means. But and I'm not gonna I don't want to it's just one of those things that probably you're right, the sins of Catholicism. But having a science degree and you've got a grounding in science as well. It
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah. Biochemistry was my love. I love endocrinology. I have a great love for physiology. I just adore the wonders of how the human body works. It still thrills me to this day. You know?
mate, and this is my favourite part of it.
Oh, look at you go! Look at you
having
go!
done having done psychology, I just find that I think a lot of the time, especially this is the teenage brain, as you know, that 25 years when my son rang me on his 25th birthday and he said, "Dad, does that mean I've plugged my frontal lobes in?" I said, "Yes, mate. You're now a fully developed human, and please use your frontal lobes wisely." I said to him, Aaron.
Yeah, to engage that cortex is a blessing indeed. No doubt. Yeah. Wow.
And I certainly wasn't at his age. But mate, can I ask you one other question or a couple more if that's have you got a few more moments?
Have indeed.
That's
All right.
conversation. One conversation I remember being a innocent bystander at, or just an over listener at, was you and Kent Murphy talking back in the day. And what I loved about that conversation was, you've been an influence on people without even knowing it. I can still remember you at school and thinking, holy dooly, that dude's got it together, whether you did or not. But what I loved about the conversation with Kent, and it was probably our 15-year school reunion, I'm going to say, you and Kent were talking about chiropractic, and you were literally coaching Kent when we were talking there. I think Kent had done something else before that. He came back to chiropractic, and then he was asking you for guidance, and you said, right, here's the rules. Da-da, da-da. But I didn't realize then you'd coach chiropractics clinics, right? But now I get why that
Yeah.
conversation makes sense.
Yeah. And Kent was so inherently made to be a good chiropractor. Firstly, he was an electrician. So chiropractors are essentially electricians for the human body in a lot of ways. Then he became an electrical engineer. And ultimately, we are absolutely electrical engineers for the human body. And so it made a lot of sense. And I think Kent was always smarter than me, stronger than me, and certainly more stable than me. And so it made more sense. He came down and visited me one day, had a look at me and my young family, seen, I guess, what was able to be created when you are able to leverage skills to help a lot of people. And he immediately seen himself being able to do that. And you've never seen someone be more successful more quickly in a career than Kent. And the reason, again, he had a family to take care of. It was one of the bravest decisions a man could make. The guy was employed by BHP, paid a lot of money to be an electrical engineer, and drops the lot, supported by his family and supported by Sarah, his beautiful wife, and drops the lot, goes back to being a full-time student for 5 freaking years in the hope that, you know, life could be a little more than flying in, flying out, or working in Blackwater or something like that. And, you know, I think it's been the makings of a great life for him and his 3 fabulous children, for sure.
And congrats. And you obviously had a big part to play in that. And I think that's influence that you've had. And you've probably got 1,000 of those stories. And of course, your kids.
Yeah, I probably have 30 or 40 of my wonderful patients who are now fantastic doctors. And it was a thing that, it was a joke I had with all my pediatric patients. It was like, what are you going to be when you grow up? And, you know, usually you get I don't know. And I said, well, do you know what I don't know is in the Universal Dictionary? It's like chiropractor. So I'm glad you made that decision. I can help you on your way. So you plant a seed, and many of them have ended up being unbelievably fantastic doctors. So that's a real thrill for me. Yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That was a good influence. That's for sure.
And I'm guessing that's because, Aaron, you must have, it sounds like you've still got really this love of the human body, but is it chiropractic that you really love? Like, I know you can't do it now.
No, not at all. Chiropractic is just a fantastic modality to free any interference with the nervous system, so that the body, you put interference in with a neurological pathway, you mess with end function, whether that be with a pancreas or a stomach or a head and whatever it is. And chiropractic in the hands of a intuitive, good quality chiropractor, miracles happen, no question. And so, but having said that, the only person that can heal the human body is the person whose body it is, and so, nobody needs a great doctor. Everybody needs to be the doctor themselves, That's the truth of the matter. We all know that, get off your ass, get fit, get strong, get live,
stop eating sugar, all that stuff. Get rid of inflammation and you'll grow.
That's it.
Happy.
You're on it. Yeah. I'm still seeking to do that every day. As I sit here sipping on my margarita, I'm seeking to limit the amount of poison I put in.
Well, you sweat it out with Bonfire yoga.
Exactly. I was actually, that's a great thing to say. I was truly blessed through the opportunities that I had within healthcare. I didn't touch any endocrinological stimulants of any description, nor alcohol, right through till I was 44 years of age. So I got to have full brain development and full, hormone
utilization of it.
Yeah. And then my son took me to Burning Man, and it's all been rapidly downhill since. So I'm like on a set of skis trying to navigate all the pitfalls that you had to navigate when you were 22. I had to navigate them when I was 48.
I love it. And I haven't been a drinker for years now, and I have a couple occasionally, but yeah, I get that. So what was Burning Man like for everyone out there listening? It's a crazy music type festival.
Yeah, music and art, and it's got 10 principles that guide it. I absolutely can't speak more highly of that whole, it's human utopia, and that ain't no joke. It's very special. 80,000 humans come together in an impossible place to exist. And, the ethos there, you can't sell anything, you can't barter anything, you can't swap anything, you can only give stuff away. And some of the principles there, radical self-reliance, radical gifting, community, all the things. It's a very, very extravagant expose of humanity at its most expressive and most brilliant. It really is. And it continues to be.
Highly recommended is what I'm hearing.
If you can possibly manifest getting into that desert, then you're ready for it.
Now, have you still got your practices?
No. These days, essentially, we I think my love is to be with my cows, and we've recently acquired some donkeys, and I've always loved horses, and I love to eat food that I've nurtured, food that I've grown. Our chickens provide the most incredible protein for us every day, and just living very simply, and looking forward to exerting the next level of influence that I think is like my epitaph. It's like my the culmination of my whole life is to exert influence over my grandchildren. I'm looking forward to that. You see, it's purpose driven. That's my purpose. Hope my children hear this and start procreating.
I love it. We started with parenting and we're back at grandparenting as
There it is.
such
There
an
it is.
addition to the human species. Can I just one or two more things, mate, quickly? From a leadership perspective, you would have had to lead practice managers, you would have had to lead yoga instructors, and I can tell that you would have been a caring leader. You would have cared for their soul as well as their sort of, their financial and physical body. What was leadership to you, Aaron?
I would say that I've never been a great leader. I'm a tremendous visionary. I'm a terrible manager. And I think you need to be a reasonably good manager to be a good leader. And so without knocking myself, what I will say is, I constantly looked to have influence over myself. And I think in having that self-discipline and seeking to take good care of myself and live the life that I really wanted to live, I think there's nothing that creates, people wanting to follow in a pathway more than you living your pathway. And so, the only influence I ever sought outside of my children, and I recognize that even that is probably illusionary, is to have influence over myself. And that's a daily struggle. That is a daily struggle. Whether it's influence over having a beer in the afternoon when I've been digging with my hands, or whether it's influence over, getting my ass in and lifting weights, or whether it's influence over having a craving for sugar or putting it in my mouth. That leadership, it underpins and foundations every single influence you'd ever be able to have, And so leading myself, I'm still definitely not at university level there, but I'm seeking constantly to increase the influence that I have over my own decisions. And I don't think there's a better way that you can have an influence and have leadership with anyone around you. But you got to nail that one first, and that's a tough one. That's a tough job.
100%.
That's a lifelong work.
It is lifelong work. It's very tempting out there, Aaron Tselepy. There's a lot of temptations out there.
Every day, more and more. Yeah, more and more. Like that's the put anyone down a pathway. I have a young man in my life at the moment who's just come out of military service for decades, and he's a fanatic around influencing his dopamine levels and comprehending how many times dopamine gets spiked from so many sources and what the influences of that are. And Huberman, I heard Huberman just a couple of weeks ago say this. He said, anytime you get a dump of dopamine that you haven't earned, it's destroying you. And he's, Huberman, you wouldn't deny that neurophysiologist. He knows his shit, right? And so that plagues me when I hear that, because I can recognize on the daily where I get some free dopamine dumps, whether that be social media, whether that be the beer, whether that be, whatever it happens to be, that is stimulatory without the sweat, that is stimulatory without the self-discipline. You will produce your own dopamine dumps, but I tell you, they're hard won and worth every effort. And I know every time I cheat, I recognize there's a long-term price to be paid for that. Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of good dopamine influences out there in terms of books. There's so much. If anybody, but I can't recommend that more highly, because it is the modern day neurological science, behavioral science, psychological science. It's basically all coming down to dopamine.
I mean, wow. Who would have thought, eh? Because, as someone who does psych, the cortisol is probably the thing that the neurotransmitter or the chemical that I talk about the most, with the stress response. And Huberman does too. Hasn't he got an amazing story of just 20 years of learning this stuff before he became
cortisol lies at cortisol's a different discussion. Cortisol lies at the heart of why humanity is chronically diseased. And, there you're talking about inflammation in the human body. There you're talking about the stress response. There, and if you don't handle cortisol, you're going to look old fast. You're going to look fat fast. You're going to wear out and die. You got to handle cortisol. Dopamine's a different one. Dopamine's on a different level. Dopamine's like, that's pure psychology. How you feel about yourself, where your motivation's coming from. Self-esteem driven.
Such a great conversation. Aaron Tselepy, best ever.
Pleasure
So-
hanging out. Pleasure hanging out with you, sir. I was thrilled to be offered the opportunity to sit and have to you. I appreciate the open space you've given me to express myself.
Mate, the pleasure is all mine, Aaron. This will be one of the best podcasts that that our listeners and our viewers will get. This is just best ever. And Aaron, my wife of 31 years, would you believe, the year after we left school, I met this amazing woman.
No greater
My proudest accomplishment, Aaron Tselepy. I don't know how I've done it.
But it's true. You sit in a very upper echelon of humanity.
And she still lives there, and she still tells me she loves me. So that's always a positive. So, and I believe
kudos to you, and you
and
get
to her.
Yeah. No, I continue to, I've failed at many things in my life, but I'm succeeding in my relationship today.
With your kids. Oh, good. And go, Alec.
And I'm definitely succeeding in my relationship with my kids. I adore the friendship and the camaraderie I have with my 3Js.
Isn't that great? We had our kids here for Christmas, one of them, Aaron, one just before and then one on Christmas Day. And I was talking to my brother while my son was sitting there, and I said, you sort of got to do the first 16 years with them. They're the painful years, but then you get to have them as an adult. And that's there's no better experience, right, than just hanging out with your kids, your growing kids.
Blessed beyond measure, Anthony. Blessed beyond measure.
Blessed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this opportunity.
And my lovely wife, Aaron, lovely wife is my #1 podcast reviewer.
I love that.
So she gives me the gift. She gives me the gift of feedback.
Well, I am very keen to. I do spend a lot of time with my headphones on, and a lot of times when I'm doing the farm work, and I've got my 2 dogs, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm looking forward to adding yours to my list. Actually, it's a serendipitous timing, because I'm a little. I've just become tired of the podcasts that I've been listening to. I have that. I'm no longer happy with the influence they're having over my subconscious, and so I'm going to add yours to my repertoire, because I still seek increasing leadership and influence over moi. And
one of the ones that you're going to hear, hopefully in the next week or two, is John McKeering, Aaron. Would you believe? Who, and I'm sure you follow John's progress over time. He's the lead singer in a rock band. So for anyone out there listening, Cosmic Psychos, and caught up with him the other day, and it just sounded like he did at age 17, which was quite amazing. And so I can't wait for that conversation. I think it'll be very different to ours. I can't wait to hear what a rocket does.
I'm going to listen to some Cosmic Psychos on the way home.
There you go. Good luck, champion. Aaron Tselepy, best ever. You rock. I really am grateful, mate. I couldn't just, this has been a highlight for me for the year, mate. So thanks, Nick.
I appreciate you, mate.
Thank you for listening or viewing our Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea. Another great chat. Please be one of the 10% of people who follow and subscribe and like our videos, so that you can get more of them and you can hear more of our amazing conversations, the conversations that I get to have and that I get to share.